team up again with you all. I hope you all had a good couple weeks, and hopefully we've been hearing from some of our people that we associate with and rub elbows with, and those that are committed to the EL program, because that's probably our biggest task. So I'll call to order our meeting. Let me read the statement first, and then we'll do a roll call, okay? Is everybody okay with that? All right. The Tennessee Department of Education is excited to work with you on this opportunity to discuss the state's formula for funding public education. Before we begin, the department would like to remind you of the following. Conversations on this topic are not intended to reflect on the current BEP funding formula. The current BEP funding formula will remain in place until a new funding formula is recommended to and approved by the Tennessee General Assembly. The public is, though, encouraged to submit comments in writing to ensure that all communications are thoroughly documented and can be reviewed and considered in the future. Public comment is encouraged to focus on developing a new funding formula rather than revising the current funding formula. Consider what should be funded in a new funding formula and at what level. Subcommittees will be responsible for reviewing public comment and making recommendations for what should be included in a new funding formula. While all committees, subcommittees, and members of the public should feel free to communicate openly, documents and records may be subject to public inspection pursuant to the Tennessee Public Records Act, and may be publicly posted or otherwise made available. All recommendations that are submitted by committees and subcommittees will be reviewed and considered, but not all recommendations will ultimately be included in proposed new funding formula. I did that one okay. All right. So let's do the roll call. All right. We'll start off with Megan Barlow Fogarty. Okay.
Chairman Lopez, apologies. I saw an email that the folks from Centro Hispano are in the waiting room waiting to be let on. I know Claudia sent that email, so Megan may be with her in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'm not showing anybody in my waiting room.
I can email them back and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe send them that link and then.
Thank you.
Why don't we wait one more minute and see if we.
Okay. Hi, Penny.
Yes.
Claudia and Mauricio are waiting also. I just received a call from Claudia.
Yeah, I'm not showing anybody in the waiting room.
Okay.
Okay, so but it's basically those two, and then I'll go down the other names and then go back to that. Okay, Tara's here, correct? You need to say here though. Okay.
Here.
Megan Vigil.
She's teaching and unable to join.
Okay. Dr. Laura Clark, I think we said couldn't make it, right? Or is that... Okay, I'm sorry. There you are. How you doing?
Hi.
I got you confused with the other doctor. I'm sorry. There's too many doctors in here. So.
Just Laura.
Rebecca Peterson. Okay. Luis Parodi, I see you.
Hello.
Okay, Dr. Gene Baker. Senator Gardenhire, we saw your phone. Are you here? Good.
Here, I'm here.
You're doing our work for us, Senator. Thank you for being in town.
Trying my best.
Representative Love. He's probably doing the same. He's not here. And Mike Edwards. Okay. Mauricio Calvo.
Here.
Okay, so you guys got on board. And who was I missing?
I know
Claudia.
Claudia.
Oh, she's here. Okay, she was trying to get into. Hope she.
Okay. Well, she's not in yet, so we'll go ahead and get started.
I'm afraid they may be on a different day or wrong site because Mauricio just entered into this room. So I'm afraid they may be on a different one. I'm not sure what's going on. I apologize.
No, that's
Should
okay. I tried about 5 times and he finally got in. So, and she texted me. She said, "Are you trying to get in?" I'm like, "Yes." So she should be. I'm gonna text her this information just to make sure she has the right one.
Okay. Well, I want to respect everybody's time, so we'll get started, and then when she comes on, she'll get you. So, oh, there she is. Claudia? Can you hear me, Claudia?
Hello.
Is that you?
There she is. Hey.
Hi.
Hey, Claudia.
Did Mauricio get in as well?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the trouble getting on. So, Penny, it won't be a problem that she missed a statement, right?
Oh, no, it's not a problem.
Okay. I know the statement's important, so I want to get there. Okay. All right. Just friendly reminders. Please make sure to review the PP deck every time before our meetings. Again, it's strongly encouraged that you engage with your stakeholder communities between meetings. Solicit as much feedback as possible from your contacts. That's basically our primary role, is for feedback from our stakeholders as well as our own, and then we categorize them as we will do later on, okay? And then remember, there's no limitations on who to talk to. Family, student, teachers, business leaders, we're all experts because we're involved in school or affected by our school system. So make sure you talk to everyone.
In last week's session, you mentioned that you had several churches that you had in your organization. I'm wondering if you could share some of those churches' names, if they're like in Chattanooga or Bradley County or somewhere in Southeast Tennessee, that that I might be able to talk to, and if you're at liberty to tell us who those are.
I don't have those in front of me, but I will get that for you. Is that okay?
That'd be fine. And
Okay.
Second, I have requested last time that we get a county by county breakdown on the racial makeup of the children or those in school. And that way we would have a better idea where to focus our energies and how to maybe work out a formula to solve some of these situations we're trying to solve. And I hadn't gotten that yet. And I'm wondering if whoever's on the line with the Department of Education could kind of give me an idea of when they might have that, because that would be very helpful.
Senator Gardenhire, I am with the Department of Ed, and I will certainly make sure they have that. I know they're working on a lot of different, all 18 of the groups are requesting data, and I know they're trying to gather that data together. So I will certainly remind them.
Yeah, Senator,
Thank you.
the way I understand it, we're going to get some of that information on meeting 4. And right now what we're trying to do is compile resources and all that. But yeah, I believe we're going to get some of that. So is that what you understand, Penny? Okay. Okay. Expertise, like I said, we're all experts involved in everybody in the process. So, all right. Overall feedback received. By the way, everybody raise their hand if they've gone through this before. If they looked at this before, these slides. Okay, so good. Okay. All right. Basically, we've gotten some public comments from the town halls. We will get those before our next meeting. The reason we're not making them all public right now is because we don't want to steer any other town halls. Right now, they want to get good representations from all of them. That way, rural as well as urban won't be slighted in any way. So we will get that, and we will all go through that before our next meeting. Okay. Basically, the overall feedback we've received, we're going to get some general things and we can add or subtract to that. The potential components of the student formula is is here. There's basically the base, which is the amount allocated for each student. Each student will get this in the state for common educational needs. Then we're going to go to the weighted area of it, and which is a multiplier assigned to student based on additional needs identified. Direct funding, that's the dollar amount allocated to students based on specific programs. And then outcomes will be additional dollars allocated based on getting stronger outcomes for traditional higher need student groups. What we have come up so far from the general consensus is that the request is districts should not receive less funding than they receive through the current BEP. So there's not going to be less funding involved. We're going to maintain flexibility for local district budgeting, ensure that whatever is currently funded outside the BEP is included in a new formula, and the local match component should be stable, what it would be under BEP for 3 to 5 years. So the local part is already in. So that's not going to change. We're not going to add more burden to the local community, is the way I understand it. This is just the state portion, okay? All right, the base.
May I interject there?
Yes.
In that general model that we just looked at, the 4 levels there,
Yes,
I do not see the question of wealth capacity of local communities addressed. And, you know, that's the equity piece. So I see, you know, lots of student focus, which I'm totally on board with that. But in there, it should still be consideration of what does the local tax base look like in order to generate adequate funds for the schools and the students in that local community. And I don't see it addressed there.
Okay, the way I understand it, the local funds will stay consistent to what they've already agreed, because I think it's 3 to 5 years out. So if additional funding is requested, that will come through the state, and that's what we're about to ask for, that additional funding. That's the way I interpret it.
Okay. All I'm saying is that a consideration of the capacity of that community to generate local funding needs to be considered, because this is where you know, the small schools lawsuits of the 90s came in from the rural schools who couldn't generate the money.
Exactly.
And so that capacity question, not necessarily the bottom line figure, or, you know, that it won't decrease. It's the proportional capacity, what I'm saying. I just want to throw it out there.
Okay. So we will note that and ask that. Okay. Thank you for that.
Let me ask you a question. If we're to start from scratch on a new BEP formula, why is there already agreement on what we should and shouldn't do from a local versus state money? Who made that decision?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you mind asking again?
Well, you keep saying that this is not going to impact the local funding, and I was trying to write this down and I couldn't catch it all, but maintain the flexibility of local people, and then only state money or state funds, and not to, and this is my word, maybe not yours, but I think I'm getting the meaning that we're not going to impose in a BEP formula on local funding.
Local funding.
Interpreted what I thought I heard you say, right?
Again, the way I interpret it is local funding will stay consistent to what is present. We're not going to add any more local. We're not going to put a burden on the local community for higher funding, i.e. higher taxes to pay for it.
Who made that decision?
Yeah, I have that question too.
I
don't know. Penny, do you know?
No, that came to us, and when I say us, me, that came to me from the commissioner. that the local match component would stay the same. I do know that TDOE is in the process of, we have dates on the calendar for local entities to come together in late December, early January to talk about this part, the local match component. Each district can bring five people with them. So I do know that each region is having this local match component. They're going to have these conversations, and it's coming up in the next few weeks.
So Penny, would it be accurate to say, I guess all 4 of those requests on the screen came from the department and are being shared with all subcommittees, it sounds like?
Yes, yes, it came from the department.
Yeah, and these 4 components are basically how they're arranging it. For instance, the base, each student is part of that formula. The weights is kind of a multiplier based on needs and that, and direct funding, so it goes down each category.
Right, and I think the question of the funding for the different areas and the wealth capacity may be addressed under the weights when we get to that conversation. I think that's in a couple of slides.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
I'll wait, and hopefully it is.
Okay, but again, if there's any requests, don't be shy. Let's get them out on the table. So the key is everybody's heard and everybody's request is heard. Doesn't mean we get what we want, but we want to hear everybody's opinion and request. Okay. So
Well, let me follow back up on what was just asked about the funding. I keep hearing we're starting from scratch, but then I also keep hearing that somebody's already made a decision of what we're not going to do with a current BEP formula. And that to me, that sounds contradictory. But take, for instance, if Hamilton County has a higher number of Hispanic children and Bradley County doesn't, or Polk County doesn't have maybe 1%, shouldn't the local LEAs contribute more money to that? I mean, why are we excluding local funding from these? And that's what gets to the heart of the information. And I just got an email or a text saying that it's in my inbox, but I can't get over to it to look at it. I assume that's it. So to me, that kind of goes to the heart of those counties that have our LEAs that has a higher proportion of Hispanic kids versus those counties that don't. Are we rewarding the counties with no Hispanic children per se versus the ones that do have a higher percentage? And what about the counties that have almost none, and yet it's the wealthier counties? It seems like we're making a disproportionate cost sharing formula.
No, again, I think like Michelle said, the higher, in other words, if a certain county has a higher percentage, that would be a weighted issue, not a base issue. A base issue, everybody gets it across the board. Okay. A weighted issue is a multiplier and it based on a specific need. And we'll go through each slide on each section. And direct funding, that could be another place where that might flow in because that's allocated for specific programs. So a certain county might have a program, another one might not. The base is what everybody's formula is. As we go up the slide, it's dependent on need. Does that help?
No, but I'll just listen.
Okay, but bear in mind the way I understand it, we're not trying to add added burden to the local community, and apparently there's an agreement for 3 to 5 years, and based on that, we're not trying to, all of a sudden, okay, hey, you're responsible for X amount local community for the next 3 to 5 years. But like Penny said, we can ask about that from the experts. So, all right, let's go to the base, unless someone else has another comment.
Well, one question, who are the experts?
The experts, good question. The experts for committee evaluation will be available the next meeting, and we could ask for that. And it's 50%. I got my notes here somewhere. Hold on. 50% comes from universities, university researchers, and 50% are practitioners who write the policy. That's who is the experts that we will be that we can request.
Okay, you you just keep mentioning experts. I just want to know who the experts are.
Right. Yeah. Most of, again, they're people who are either doing research, for instance, research on EL issues, or people who are writing policy.
Hopefully these are economists coming out of universities doing economic research. I'm hoping that's who those experts are, because we need the eyes of economists as well as school funding people in terms of the actual formula and the calculations and the weighting and all that. So hopefully those are included in these experts.
Yes, and again, that's another subcommittee is doing more the dollars and cents. We're just, our committee is what do we want?
Yes.
We're not concerned about dollars and cents, okay? We're not creating a budget. I know, Senator, that might be disheartening because that's your issue, because the legislator decides on dollars and cents, not the Department of Education. But our task is, what's our wish list to make EL learning a better component? So we're not going to be dealing with dollars and cents. Okay. All right. The base.
That is disconcerting, because we're supposed to put together our ideas on a BEP, and I use this word seriously, formula, and a formula has to do with funding.
Correct.
And yet I'm hearing we won't have anything to do with dollars and cents, just wish list. And that's a little bit contradictory in my eyes, but that's okay. I'll just keep listening.
Yes, Senator. And there's a whole other committee that deals with dollars and cents. So, and I think they've got 15 people like we do, or 12 people. So I think it'll be funneled through that. So, and then obviously, ultimately funneled through you all, because you're the ones that are going to approve the budget and all that. So, all right, base. Again, this is provided and allocated for each student. Every student will get that. And as you can see in the bullet points, these are the feedbacks that we received. This is general now. We're going to be able to read each and every one of them, but this is general from the town halls and the feedback that they've gotten. And below are the resources that have been consistently named in public feedback. These bullets only identified statewide trends to be considered in the feedback ultimately provided by the subcommittee. So far, the 5 big ones have been nurses, counselors, school psychologists, teacher salaries and benefits, and flexibility for facility funding and or deferred maintenance. So each based on student models, all this stuff will be funded at a percentage. Okay. So do any of you support, add, or change, or any other considerations that we should add to this that each student should receive?
You mean that the per pupil cost should be based on? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. And I think the average, and Penny, correct me if I'm wrong, right now the base multiplier is around $5,100 per student.
Read those off again. You said nurses, counselors.
Yes.
Social workers.
No, school psychologists.
School psychologists.
And that's at the nationally recommended ratio. Teachers' salary and benefits, and flexibility for facility funding and or deferred maintenance.
In other words, bricks and mortar.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mauricio Calvo. So if on those numbers that on the distribution that you just mentioned, since we're talking about ELL learners, is any part of this funding directed to specific family counseling of our family connectors between English speakers and non-English speaker support staff?
Good question.
That is coming in the next slide, which I think is the weighted thing. So weighted, again, this is for everybody. I don't care where you're from or what you do, okay? The weighted will be for special needs or special program, which that I think will go under, okay? And we can add that to that on the weights.
Chairman Lopez, if I may add, it feels important from this committee's perspective that at least those top 4 categories, nurses, counselors, school psychologists, and teachers, that they have cultural relevancy training, that they're equipped to be able to work well with English learners. I'm not sure how that gets added in, but that feels important.
Okay, thank you. We'll
That
add that.
is important.
Yeah, I think where we have
I
the
was-
challenge is like when the senator says that there's a certain county that there's not as many, you know, and so, but definitely, I think that should be part of the teacher training. So yes.
Well,
And
let me ask you, well,
the weighted one, we could add more funds, let's say to Metro, because there's a higher percentage of ELL students than let's say at a different county where there might not be many at all. Does that make sense to you?
Well, yes, well, except that in the county, and if y'all will note, I sent a document right before this meeting by email where I have the feedback from 6 districts representing 20,000 English learners, and how many teachers are in this group? 737 ESL teachers is this feedback. But that question that Chairman Lopez that you just said, is the consideration is, I think it's a safe statement to say that every district in the state has English learners, and they're not all Spanish speakers. So every district has English learners. So yes, it'll be proportional in the smaller districts, but still we have to fund it to the degree that it can meet ratios and it can provide the services, even in the smaller districts. And, you know, the larger districts certainly will get larger amounts, but we still need to look at ratios and proportional funding in the smaller districts, because the issue they have is that they have to cover, for example, one feedback I got, 58 students with 3 teachers covering a distance of about 25 miles apart. So, you know, there are different issues, smaller issues, but still relevant to that district.
Correct. So unless I'm reading this wrong, again, that might be on the weighted, not the base, because more funding would be required, or more expertise would be on the bigger district and in the smaller one. But to your, what both of you have said is correct, that everyone should have that skill. But I think on the weighted, it would be more emphasized. But Penny, you did get their request, correct? Okay.
I did. I'm putting that under the base, and I will, I transfer all of these to the TN EDU funding committee.
Okay.
I think one more point on the base might be a reference to appropriate curriculum.
Okay.
And I don't see that addressed here. And curriculum decisions are made at the district level, not at the state level generally. State may recommend, but districts make the decisions. And so, however, curriculum goes across the board. And so, appropriate curriculum add to this base conversation.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to weights. All right, this is probably the one that we're most interested in. It's the following are the areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what should be weighted. And again, weighted is a multiplier assigned to student for specific needs, such as EL, and I'll go there, economic disadvantage and concentration on poverty, students with disabilities. And then here we are, English learners, to include tiers based on English proficiency, rural and sparsity, and fast growing and charter enrollment.
Raul, what exactly do they mean by students with disabilities here? What kind of disabilities?
It's typically referring to special education students. Typically, that's what the term disabilities is referring to. So it can range from physically disabled to intellectual disabilities to attention deficit disorder to dyslexia. That's typically in the education lingo what disabilities covers.
All right. So we're looking at several of these that, particularly for the ELL and Latino students, recent arrivals, we're looking at quite a few of these that they would fall under.
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Jeannie Barker.
Mm-hmm.
There are rules and guidelines around students with disabilities, making sure that we could determine that and take language out of the equation. So it is extremely difficult to identify an ELL student who comes to our school district to rule out language. So it's very difficult to get them identified as a special needs, a special education student until they've been proficient with the language. So there's a conflict right there. And
that's a conversation we've had here at MTSU. And I'm glad you brought it up because we have the Dyslexia Center here at MTSU. And then we have our professional development for teachers of English learners here. And that overlap of English learners that have language disabilities. Ideally, the testing has to be done in their native language to determine if they have a language disability. There's definitely an overlap because, and it's important that we figure out a way to identify this so that English learners can receive all of the support they need.
But that is a specialized kind of testing. It's also a specialized person who conducts that testing.
That's
so
right.
That would be highly costly, and it is not available. And I can tell you in K-12 school districts, it's just not available.
Right, it's not.
Well,
but it is a question of equity, though.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yes, but that would not be something. I mean, we're talking about K-12 funding, so I don't know how you get to that to make that practical.
Well, okay. Part of this, to me, and you guys could agree or disagree with me, it's a little confusing because right now we're talking the different layers of how funding is done. Okay. Our task, and we'll get to that at the end, is, for instance, what you just said would probably be something that the committee is going to say we must have this. Okay. And our task at the end of the day is we're going to have 4 categories: must have, should have, what was it? Nice to have, and long shots. And we come up with those, and then they plug it in to these different categories, whether it's a weighted category based on the population, a base that really covers all students. All students need nurses. Okay. All students need counseling. That's so it will be plugged into these categories. So it's a little confusing, but at the end of the day, our committee is going to come up with must have, should have, so on and so forth. And what you all are saying are must haves, and we'll get to that. But first, I just going over the different categories, and then we will go into all the recommendations. Does that make better sense?
Sure.
But Dr. Barker, I have made a notation in weights because I have it categorized, and my feedback goes back to TDOE in each of the base weights direct funding, I do have that it is a problem that students must be proficient in the English language, which makes it difficult to diagnose students. And so I have noted that.
Thank you.
Sure. And as if you can see, again, these are feedbacks. These bullet points are feedbacks from the town halls, what they perceived as the important issues, not the Department of Education, it's from the town halls. And you could even see that some feedback that was considered previously but hasn't been coming up in the town halls are things like gifted, dyslexia, you know, things like that, which for some reason haven't come up in the town halls. Okay. All right. Additional dollars. The following are areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what may be considered as additional funding. So financial literacy, you know, that came up in the town halls that should require additional funding. Middle school CTE, innovative high school models, the STEM program, P-TECH, IHS, an extended school year, RTI, and high dosage tutoring. Again, is there anything out there that you guys would consider additional funding?
I'm wondering about family resource centers and family supports. If that's something. Did you say school resource officers? Did you say that?
No. That did come up in the conversation.
Those are some ideas.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So some kind of funding that would help, what did you say, family involvement?
Family resource centers. It's called FRCs.
Okay.
And school systems have to have those, and they're critical to the operation. So, and I don't see them falling under some of the other areas.
Okay.
So SROs as well for safety.
I believe under this category, I would add a system of translators and interpreters. And it's linked to that family resource center because they are primarily for the benefit of family members, you know, the translation and interpreting primarily.
Okay. That's good. Anybody else? All right. Outcomes. Okay. Outcomes, again, are additional funds based on stronger outcomes or outcomes for higher need student groups. Again, from the feedback from that TDOE has gotten is early post-secondary opportunities completion, AP course completion and or passing for economically disadvantaged students with disabilities and English learners, earning industry certificates or certification, work-based learning completion metric, closing the achievement gap, reading proficiency, and differentiated compensation support. So all this funding would be based on outcomes.
Representing our students, the WIDA access scores are a measure of their success in language acquisition. If they can test through the WIDA access and move out of ESL, ultimately that's the goal. So it might be the question, we have two metrics here. How quickly are they transitioning through the levels of English learners, the tiers, and how often do they transition out of needing ESL services? Okay,
so we would have additional funding as has been successful in those two tiers.
Well, now I thought we were talking about outcomes here.
Yes.
Ways to measure success, right? Is that what we're talking about? The WIDA access scores and the transitioning out of English learn ESL services. If you transition out, that means wow, you've acquired English and you don't need it anymore. That's a success story.
Correct.
So, the number or percentage of students who are transitioning out of the programs, as well as the WIDA access numbers.
Right. So there should be, in a sense, a reward for that because they've successfully doing that.
Well,
Are you saying funding on the tiers?
I'm not talking about funding. I'm looking at this outcome slide, and to me, that is asking for what are ways to measure success? What are the outcomes we're seeking? Am I reading it right?
No, unless Penny, you could describe. The way I understand it is there's a funding component if they graduate through these process.
So it's a way to, I assume that it's a way to reward districts that have strong outcomes with additional funding, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Well, the WIDA access is one, and
Okay.
transitioning out of the ESL. That's similar to the mention of the AP.
So the WEED thing that you're describing is a test, correct?
It's WIDA. It's an acronym, WIDA.
So
And it's called Access. It's the test that they give every year to English learners.
well, then should that be more in the base that every school does that, the testing component?
Well, they all do
They
it.
have to.
Required to do
Okay,
it.
so that's under the base. The
Uh-huh.
outcome is a reward for succeeding as you graduate.
Okay.
The funding is in other words, if 50 people succeed in some school district, they get a reward for that. And if a school district only, again, proportionally only does 2, they don't get as much additional dollars the following year.
I would consider that worthy of a reward. I certainly would, because
Okay.
yeah, I would.
I think so too. I think you should celebrate that. Yeah. Okay. Did you get that, Penny? You're on it. That's why you make the big bucks. All right. All right. Any other questions on that or comments? All right. This is really, unfortunately, we're down to 15 minutes, but this is really our task here. Okay. Again, to have, must have, should have, nice to have, long shot. And our goal is to put all our requests in those categories. Okay. And the way we will do that, again, is great suggestions that you all have already had. And from that, we categorize them. Okay. As well as we're going to be getting the town hall comments, and we're going to be going through those. And if we see any of those that we think needs to be in those categories. So I've heard a lot of must-haves today. So we will, once we gather all that, we will categorize that under those categories. So,
And Chairman Lopez, I'll tell you what it might be a good idea or nice to do right now is if Dr. Clark shared some feedback with us in an email. I haven't had a chance to pull it up because I've been on here for quite a while before getting things prepared. But you might share, if you've had time to go through it, you might share, Dr. Clark, some of the things that you saw in that feedback, and the group could discuss where that could go. And you don't have to, we're not coming up with your formal recommendations right now. We are still just going through the feedback that you all gather. So Chairman Lopez, I don't know if that's okay with you or not, but that might be something that you listen to. It would be a new way of gathering more ideas.
sure, that'd be great.
I'll be happy to do that. And would you like me to screen share? Can I screen share on here?
Ask Penny. Definitely don't ask me on that one. That's one of those that if I get this, it'll come in outcome.
Your email. So you each should have it in your email, but I'll be happy. I'll go ahead there. I sought feedback from the population of people that we've been providing professional development to for the last 4 years. And so the response I got were from district leaders in one urban district. It was from Metro, from 3 suburban districts, and that was Clarksville, Montgomery, Murfreesboro City, and Williamson, and then 2 rural districts, Wilson and Lawrence County. That's the feedback. And so you see the numbers on this document. And so we're talking about districts that serve more than 20,000 English learners. And we're talking about districts that employ 737 ESL teachers. And that's what these comments are representative of. I have categorized this document in 4 areas. There are comments about the need for teachers and support staff, and comments, and these are verbatim from these district leaders. And I'll go over them quickly. Funds needed to pay for ESL teachers and curriculum and instructional needs. Mental health services available in multiple languages. Professional development for content teachers. That means the regular math teacher needs some professional development to learn how to work with English learners taking math. Other references to teachers. We must increase for more teachers highly qualified in ESL and educational assistants. That means the teacher aides and the ESL coaches. Those are other assistants in the school that help teach. Adding language supports for English learners in classroom content like math or social studies. And ESL coaches to model strategies such as SIOP, TPR. Those are models of teaching. Bilingual social workers, bilingual mental health staff, providing support for students in languages other than English. And changing the ratios. They acknowledge Tennessee's got pretty good ratios, but just meeting the ratios of 35 to 1 teacher, 35 students to 1 teacher, is not always adequate. So they're asking for more money to have assistants, ELL assistants, EAs in the classrooms, and which is a particular struggle for those districts with lower resources. In terms of, here's the second category, translators, interpreters, and family support. Repeatedly, every one of them mentioned the need for translators and interpreters in all of those districts. They made references, here's the third category, policy, federal funding, and curriculum. These are the kinds of comments they said that funding could impact. Schools need more funding to educate students who are at lower proficiency levels. You need, if a student is a brand new English learner and they're at lower levels, you need a very small ratio there, as opposed to a 1 to 35 or 1 to 24. You need like a 1 to 5, ideally. And that means 1 teacher, 5 students, something like that. But particularly when they're brand new English learners. And the EL formula, again, this is a policy discussion, but it needs to take into consideration the different levels of English learners. Some have been here for 1 month and they're just learning English, and some have been here for 5 years and they're about to transition out, but we still need to look at the different levels of services. Let's see, policy, reference to Title III, which is a federal program, but they're asking, is there a way we can allocate more of the Title III money for English learner support? And they're asking for a K-12 ESL curriculum statewide. There is no consistency among districts. And to have some guidance on research-based approved curriculum would be very helpful. And the last category here, the needs of rural districts. Comment from one of the directors: we struggle with covering so many grades in schools. Although Tennessee has a great student-teacher ratio, our teachers are frequently not in the building because they're traveling. Serving 35 students at one school is not an issue because they don't have that many students ESL at one school. But they may be at 3 or 4 schools that one teacher has to serve. That's unique to rural. And then the large geographic area of the rural districts also is prohibited. So what I did on this document is I copied and pasted straight from my email responses of these 6 districts. And the districts go across the rural, suburban, urban spectrum so that we can hear perspectives from multiple places. And it gives one of these sections that you can read later, gives a nice breakdown of the different levels, the English language proficiency levels. Because in our recommendations, I think it is, in my opinion, it's important that we be as specific as we can be in using the policy language that schools use to allocate funding and implement funding. You know, we're not advising on how to do the formula because we're not economists, but we are listening to those who are implementing the formulas in the districts and the schools, and we're seeing, and they're providing to us, where are the gaps? And I think we need to use that language that they've given us when we make our must-have, should-have, nice-to-have, and long-shot list. So there's that document if you'd like to look at it. I also have feedback in terms of some personal scenarios that they have provided to me, some stories. When we make a presentation, those personal stories are powerful. And we can share those if you think it's a good idea, but I have some of those as well. But I think the document that I sent to y'all, I think it's helpful because it came straight from the mouths of the district leaders and those who are implementing the current policy with the current funding model.
Well, that's great. No, that's all. In fact, I would encourage everybody to come up with their own lists. And then we have time to, the more information that we could share prior to a meeting, the better, that we can kind of go over it. And of course, it'll all be public. So we always CC Penny, and we can go, you know, and you could put next to it what you consider must have, should have, and all that. But we can all discuss it. And if we all have a list like that, that would make it a lot easier to go over this, because everything you just said is huge and needed. We just need to categorize it. So I think that's very helpful. Thank you for doing that. And for anybody else, I would encourage them in this group to do likewise. And then what we could do is add to it what the town hall people said too, and emails. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I guess that's our homework. You know, again, to go back to the community, maybe compile lists like we just saw, and kind of categorize them, and then we can do our recommendations. And I think the next 2 meetings, that's basically what we're going to be doing, is categorizing those. But we will have a bunch of added email or added information from the town hall meetings to incorporate that.
Yes, and I sent an email last night. That information is already in the in your Google Drive.
Okay.
Those public comments and feedback. And then I'd also like Chairman Lopez, if I could just go over some of the things that we've discussed today, just to make sure that it's okay with the group, and that I haven't missed something. If you don't mind, I'll do that pretty quickly.
No, that'd be great.
Okay. Senator Gardenhire wants a county by county breakdown of English learners. He also asked who were the experts that decided that local match would stay the same, and then that the state would pay. I will include that question. Then we discussed the different levels under base you all said that the nurses, counselors, school psychologists, and teachers should all have cultural connections. The ratios should be examined, and there should be appropriate curriculum. In the weights, you all discussed that there was a problem with the ELL students, that they must be proficient in the English language, which makes it difficult to diagnose the student. Disabilities, if there are any. Under direct funding, wondering about family resources, the FRCs, SROs, and a system of translators and interpreters should be included under the direct funding. And in the outcomes, Dr. Clark mentioned that the WIDA access scores and transitioning out of the programs should also be included. And then, Dr. Clark, I didn't capture everything you said, Dr. Clark, but that email I will forward that to tnedu.funding. If you didn't do that already, I'll share that with them. And that will also be compiled into the public feedback. But I did jot down a few of the things that you said. ESL teachers, mental health, multiple languages, curriculum, regular ed teacher training, educational assistants need training as well. There's a need for bilingual social workers and support staff, more educational assistants for this population of students, a need for translators and interpreters. EL formula needs to take in the different level of services. Title III should be considered K-12 ESL curriculum statewide, and teachers must serve multiple schools in rural areas. And could you tell me again, Dr. Clark, what districts where that came from?
Yes, Metro Nashville, Murfreesboro City, Rutherford County, not Rutherford, Williamson County, Wilson County, Lawrence County, Clarksville, Montgomery.
Okay, that's an incredible amount of feedback. That's appreciated.
And it's an intentional cross section because the issues are different depending on the level of urbanicity. It's different. But yes. I would add, please, that we continue to remember that this is more than Spanish speakers. So in that request for data, I'm curious to know if the state tracks the number of different languages that are being served in the state of Tennessee. I mean, even Rutherford County, which is not metro, we have 90-something different home languages. And so we have to remember this is not just Spanish-speaking children.
Correct. And the subcommittee covers all languages. That your subcommittee covers all of those.
Yes.
So I will also ask, is there a breakdown of different languages that the state has?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any last comments? We're on OT right now, so.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chairman Lopez.
Yeah, well, thank you all. This has been very, very productive, and I love that. Again, I really encourage. I know we're not going to meet till the new year, so January 4th, by the way, 2022 at 12 o'clock Central Time again. So I encourage you to go into your community. I love the way we had that in writing. If we can, if other people can do that too, it would be very helpful. And feel free to email all of us if you got that, because the longer time we have to review it, the less time we have to discuss it. So, because we got a lot on our table. So thank you again. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and good holidays and a wonderful New Year. And don't watch too much football. Well, why not? Go ahead and do it. And just enjoy the holidays and looking forward to the 4th. So God bless you all and looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Chairman Lopez.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.